How you doing, folks? Yours truly, Randy Rand here for today's talk. Today we talk to Dr. Roma Benjamin, who's now a good friend of the show, and she is the founder of New Sound Literacy and Technology Center out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She's also a retired principal from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania School District, and she's also the pastor and founder of New Wine Gateway International, which is also out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Today was a great interview. We talked about the sacrifice that she made leaving her job as an administrator out there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, as she retired early, which would decrease the amount that she would receive for her pension, which is quite a sacrifice, quite frankly. I know I can't afford to do that, but she made a sacrifice in doing so, and we talked to her a little bit about that. And we also talked about the vulnerability of students that attend subpar performing schools, and about the actual danger that they're in, being that they're not receiving the necessary skill sets that they will need to succeed out here in life. We also talked about the market failure. I asked her if she felt that there's a market failure, where the demand outweighs the supply when it comes to education for our children, and she said yes. And you'll want to hear what she had to say about that. And we also spoke about how illiteracy is generational and it's passed down for generations, and what we can do to stop that cycle from being turned over and over and over. This was one of my better interviews, quite frankly, and as usual, Dr. Benjamin made for a great conversation and imparted some great content and information that, quite frankly, I think all of us could use. So here's the interview. Enjoy it, and thanks for the time. And we're back. Yours truly, Randy Rand in the house, and welcome to today's talk. Today we are speaking with a good friend of the show now, as this is her third time back, Dr. Roma Benjamin. She is the pastor and founder of Greater Faith Ministries in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She's also a retired principal from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania School District, and she's also the founder of the New Sound Literacy and Technology Center. Pastor Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brother Randall. And, there's one little correction. The name of my church changed. It's New Wine Gateway Ministries International.
Okay.
I forgot to get that to you, but it's New Wine Gateway Ministries International. Just a little change.
Okay. That's New Wine, W-I-N-E?
Yes, sir. New Wine Gateway Ministries International. My focus really is on literacy and bringing it back to the forefront, because right now functional illiteracy is accepted in our society.
It's accepted way too much, and it's become commonplace. And
right.
Certainly you ought to be lauded for what you are doing, Pastor Benjamin. I can't tell you how much of a fan that I am of what you are doing as well as
Wow,
of you.
thank you.
So certainly. As I mentioned in the beginning, you are a retired principal from the Harrisburg School District. You made a great sacrifice making the leap from being an administrator to starting your own business teaching children how to read. Could you please speak to the level of sacrifice it's going to take for our community to ensure our children learn how to read?
Well, Randall, it's first of all, it's a sacrifice because I'm not old enough to retire, neither do I have the years. So that means I'm not even getting a full pension because I'm real serious about this. I'm real serious about getting into the fabric of our communities, because a lot of times our communities are left unaware of what is really, really taking place with what we call education. And our leaders in the community, our church leaders in the community, our political leaders in the community, it doesn't matter what title they have or do not have. They're going to have to become aware that the public school cannot do this by themselves.
That's right.
And if we don't create the type of environment, the type of movement that would ensure that our children are first and foremost coming out of school proficient and or advanced, instead of coming out of school illiterate when you're in the place of literacy. You're supposed to be literate when you go to school.
Yes.
If nothing else, when you come out of 12th grade, you should supposed to be able to read on, if not above grade level. So our communities really got to sit down and go back to the drawing board and see how we can, first of all, look at the needs of our children. I deal with kids every day, just like you do.
Yes.
And I'm dealing with parents and with children with age ranges from kindergarten. Now I'm taking in high school, and a lot of these kids read 3 and 4 and 5 grades below their level, Randall. And it is disheartening that this is happening in the 21st century. You know, we can't keep having meetings and statistical drives and, you know, putting out information that says what is happening without taking some type of initiative to put a dent in it, if not stop it completely.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There's got to be some kind of way that we could put a dent in this. Because, you know, you work with children.
Yes.
You work with educated children. You work with special children. I work with special children, too. Every child I get almost has an IEP.
Okay.
And if they don't have an IEP, they qualify for an IEP.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting to the place now that we have to understand and know what are we going to do. And the community is going to have to sacrifice some of these extracurriculars. They have a lot of sports and a lot of things that will catch our kids' attention that way. And I don't have a problem with that. But we got to bring balance to this. We have to bring balance to this to make sure, if nothing else, Randall, our kids can read. If nothing else, that they can read.
Regarding curriculum development, what would you like to see that's not being done or considered when these curriculums are being developed?
You know, that's an awesome question, because the way I see it, especially in our urban schools, some kind of way, the curriculum, when you say curriculum, first of all, Randall, that's a loaded word.
Yes.
Because curriculum could be whatever people want it to be. You know, we are taught on Western education. Our stuff comes from the Greek philosophy, and all of that is rooted and grounded in that. And so, you know, when you think back to when you were in school, when I was in school, and we did Shakespeare and we did all of those kind of things. And right now, I can't tell you what Shakespeare could do for me or what I could do for Shakespeare. And, you know, and in the time that we live in, because technology is so advanced, curriculum should have a very strong foundation, intensive reading. I believe right now in schools, if I was a superintendent, Randall, and I was in an urban district, I would go in that school, especially knowing that they don't meet AYP, they do not pass standardized tests. I would go in that school and I would make sure that every teacher on every grade level, especially in elementary, kindergarten through 5th grade, that every teacher knew how to teach reading and had some kind of intensive reading for 1 hour every day. The curriculum would be solely in literacy. Instead of saying you got to do science at this time, you got to do social studies at this time, you have to do this. I would make sure that the curriculum is really embedded with strong principles, with strong foundation of reading, of sounds, the way that, you know, phonemic awareness, phonics. They didn't take God out of school. They took phonics out. I would make sure that that was included in every child's classroom, every teacher, so that we can guarantee that our kids would come out reading. Because right now, Randall, they're not coming out reading.
No, they're not.
And I have proof. I have a center. It goes from K to 8, but I just took in a 10th grade student who is a year behind. He's reading on a kindergarten level. Now, explain to me, and he has an IEP, and they're going to pass him, and he has the privilege to go to school until he's 21, based on special ed regs. But just tell me, they'll keep him moving, and he can't read. They want to keep him in sports, and I don't have a problem with that. But he can't read. Now, what do we do? So his mother and grandmother brought him to me. And it's not easy. I'm telling you right now, my work is cut out for me. It is not easy to do this because they are already set in their ways of getting in school. One kid came in and said, well, we get word searches at the end of the day, and we get coloring papers. And that's what they do to our kids, you know, instead of taking the time to say, okay, half hour at the end of the day is going to be some type of intensive reading. environment, and I'm looking for curriculum that will address that, not just, STEM schools for the special kids, for the elite kids, for the self-motivated kids, but literally to deal with our kids um, who are falling through the cracks and to give them that type of environment. But teachers have to be well trained with that too, Randall.
Yes,
they can't
indeed.
say in the fifth grade, well, they should have learned how to read by the time they was in the third grade. Now they're in the fifth grade. It shouldn't be on me. Yes, it should. If a child is in the fifth grade and they still don't have the rudiments of reading, then it's on that teacher. That's why we are called educators.
Reading is the key to unlocking the doors for many people whom are prisoners in their own existences and world. Please speak about how learning to read serves as the first impetus for our children to be able to study, learn, and develop skills that will make them productive members of society.
Absolutely. Reading is the bedrock, Randall. You and I both know that if our kids do not have that foundation at an early age, then our kids are going to end up in prison trying to get reading in the
Yeah.
prison system.
Going to
You know what I'm
prison to
saying?
learn how to read. That's backwards.
That's just the oxymoron. Why would we go to prison? Why would we get locked up and then say this is where? And I know I'm not knocking those who are in prison who are trying to learn how to read, but if we would address this at the early ages and help them understand, reading helps you to think. Reading helps you to go places that you would never be able to go in the physical. Reading opens up your understanding and helps you to develop in areas that you can't do without these skills. And to be a productive member in society, whether you and I have one thing in common,
Mm-hmm.
we're literate.
Yep.
That makes us productive.
Yes.
You understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
We're literate because we continue to increase in learning and enhancing, researching, and being better.
Yes.
When you can't read, you settle for whatever is placed before you. That's why our children, our communities, our society is almost without hope. Because our kids are saying, well, I can't make money, so I might as well sell drugs, or I might as well do this. No, there is an out. There is an out. And we have to create the environment that will address this. Shipping them all off to public school is not the answer. I'm sorry to say, because everybody is in there does not value education.
Mm-hmm.
There are people in there that's just making a check. They, getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not passion. It's not desire. It's not fire. And it's not drive. And I know they want to say we take our hats off to teachers, but when you're more focused on payday and raises and you're willing to push the kids to the side to get that, there's a problem. Because I would prove you owe me a raise because I'm producing kids that will make it in school, high school, college, or whatever, 2-year colleges. That's what I'm producing. So you owe me money. But if we're not producing that, we're putting our money in the wrong areas.
We are speaking with Pastor and Dr. Roma Benjamin. She is the pastor and founder of New Wine Gateway International out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She's also a retired principal from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania School District. And she's the founder of New Sound Literacy and Technology Center out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And she's so good to give us some of her very valuable time. Dr. Benjamin, you mentioned creating the appropriate environment. I want to stick with that and ask, learning environments are a key factor in a child's learning ability, whether they're successful or not. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for a child that's attending a less than favorable school with inadequate
Mm-hmm.
materials, less experienced teachers, and an administration that has its hands tied for one reason or another, what would you propose be done in situations like this?
And I've been in that situation. And one of the problems with that, Randall, is that we and I say we've, not saying you and I, but, just in general, we put a Band-Aid on that. We know that they have inadequate materials, and we place the least experienced teachers in there. We put administrators in there for 2 or 3 years, and if they don't turn it around and change it, then we take them out, and then we put in another administrator. And then, they want the government to give them money to solve their problem, and the government is a large part of the problem. Mm-hmm. And so in those types of situations, somebody has to be able to go in and say, okay, let me look at this from the root of the problem, because they'll blame parents, and they'll say these parents are not involved and these kids are raising themselves. And, we have all these excuses to say that this is why it's like it is. But you got to go in, you got to pioneer work. I just told somebody today, I would really love to be superintendent of a district and go in there and be controversial and turn it around and say, we're no longer promoting failure, because that's what I was a part of. We're not promoting failure, but we're going to stop everything. And we're going to guarantee that within the next 2 to 3 years, every child will be reading on grade level and or above grade level. And those who aren't, those are the ones who need remediation. A whole district should not be on remediation and intervention. You understand?
Yep.
So sometimes you have to go in and you have to gut out what it sounds tough, it sounds hard, but you got to gut it out, because the more you put a Band-Aid on it, and this because you're in it, you're around it, the worse it gets. And then you become frustrated, aggravated, irritated, all the aids. Mm-hmm. And you end up not being effective or efficient at all. And I believe in these, and you know what, Randall, we could turn these environments around, because the key factor in the environment is the child.
Yes.
It's the child. Mm-hmm. So if we don't do something, then our children are going to continue. It's like this. Literacy is learned. Illiteracy is a curse. It comes from people being ignorant, people not valuing reading, people not even valuing education. You know what I'm saying? People not valuing that. It takes more than just being able to make some money here and there. I say it like this. When parents are more stressed out over getting their kids to this sport and buying this latest sneaker, you putting $150 pair of sneakers on a child's foot, you better put a $50 pair of sneakers on that child's foot and $100 saving somewhere for that child's education or to make that child better. Because every $100 pair of dollar shoes you got to put on their foot, you got to put another pair. And so you're taking the value away from what is really needed and what really has purpose and destiny in it, mm-hmm. and just putting it on something that is temporary, something that's going to wear out.
So it's a matter of priority,
Absolutely.
What's important to you, your child's education, or, making sure that they look good or stylish or smelling good or what have you. If that's what's important to you, well, good luck with that. But when the child is not reading on grade level or is having some kind of learning difficulty, you got a problem.
But then you can't go after the teachers and the principals and the legislators, because if you're not doing anything about it, if you're not willing to stand up and say, okay, look, I'm struggling as a reader and my child is too. Now, what help can you give me? A parent just came to me and said, I told another parent about you and they have 2 kids. Would you test them? And I said, do they have IEPs? Well, I had already known they had IEPs. I could just tell.
Yeah.
I could just tell that, because her kids have IEPs. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So you are with your environment. You become a part of your environment. And so I said, tell her to get in touch with me, because this is the end of the school year. And the summer is a time where kids lose track of everything. That's why I do an intensive reading program in the summer, which is inclusive of writing and keyboarding, using technology. I do it very intensive so that they can stay sharp enough so that when they go back to school in August or early September, they're not completely lost. But you're right. It's what you value. We blame teachers, Randall. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are. We do have some marginal teachers. We do have bad teachers. We do have bad administrators. But are we going to continue to pay them, or are we going to get in there and say, okay, what can we do? to turn this whole situation around, because it's going to take more than just getting on television hollering and cussing and screaming and hollering,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
You got
and
that right.
calling names. It's going to take more than that.
Yes, it is. I want to stick with the same vein of the point that you brought up with regards to, saying if a parent, can't read and their child can't read, can you help me? That's leading me into my next question. When talking about illiteracy, we understand that it's generational and passed
Yeah.
down for generations. In your opinion, can there be a multi-pronged approach that attacks illiteracy for older people as well as the youth? And if so, how?
I believe there is what you just described as a multi-pronged approach. I do, because my drive first was with the children, but when I began to realize that I had a grown man stand up in front of my church one day crying, said he's going to be 40 in July, and he said he wants to come to my program. Now he knows it's for children. He don't know what he's doing, because when he gets paid, he feels that they're not paying him right because he can't read.
Oh
So
my
he
God.
said that they just do anything with him. So he stands there crying, grown man. I'm like, what do I do? And I'm like, I reached out, to help him. He was pleading with me. I reached out to help him because I realized, Randall, that wasn't a grown man crying. That was a little boy, not
Yep.
disrespecting manhood. And so I'm looking at this now as, what can I do to literally extend this to the adult as well as to the child? Because it's a little bit more difficult with an adult, because adults are set in their ways,
Uh
and they've
huh.
already developed habits that is not easily broken and just destroyed off of them. But I am looking at this, from a family point of view, to really get the families to understand that you don't want your child to be what your family line has dictated it should be.
Uh huh.
You could change it. You could stop it.
In your opinion, is there a market failure when it comes to our children receiving the needed skill sets in order to be successful?
Yes, I believe that there is a failure. Yes, absolutely. Because the skill sets, our children, the needed skill sets starts in early education. And, when you start dealing with, um, like in Detroit, dilapidated schools and bad environments, where people don't even want to go in themselves. And, when we say government don't give us enough money for education, or we turn around and say, you know, this don't have enough money for that, yes, there is a market failure because then our kids start looking towards other things to meet their skill set to be successful.
Uh huh.
Like they'll say, a street young man is smart, and I choose to differ that. Because if you're smart, you wouldn't be in the streets, because eventually the streets kill you.
Yep.
You're working for somebody. Somebody is making money off of what you call street smart. So they're smarter than you, sitting on an island with machine gun guys standing around protecting them. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not that smart.
That's
You
right.
understand what I mean?
Uh huh.
But we do have a problem in our market, and I believe in this day and age, Randall, we could turn that around. We've got to go to the resources and to the places, especially as the church. We have to go to the resources, to the places that can guarantee small environments so that we could get the kids the skill sets that they need to really be successful.
We are speaking with Dr. and Pastor Roma Benjamin. She is the pastor and the founder of New Wine Gateway International out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She is a retired principal from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania School District, as well as the founder of New Sound Literacy and Technology Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we certainly appreciate her giving us uh, some of her very valuable time. Dr. Benjamin, could you please speak to the vulnerability of students whom are attending subpar performing schools?
They don't have a chance, Randall, if we really be honest. That's why I really believe in charter schools and private schools where parents can really get the necessary needs met for their children. Because when these subpar schools, it's basically just to get them in and get them out. I
Mm-hmm.
know for a fact, if you're there 70% of the time, you're going to get a C, they're going to pass you.
Yep.
So, and that's a mentality, and that's a dangerous mentality because the kids didn't take that on and they think, okay, well, if that's what happened to me in school, that's what's going to happen to me at work. So that's why we have kids who, have a job and the turnover is so great because they never got what it took within the school system, to be accountable, to be responsible. Our schools, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They don't have enough materials anyway to deal with it. The mindset is they're not going to do homework. They're not going to go to class. They're going to cut class. But they're not doing that because they're subpar. They're doing that because they can't read.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's the bottom line. Because even in a subpar school, if you get some people with real heart, with real desire to transform kids, you can make a difference. You can make a change.
So regarding the public school and the charter school argument, you come down on the side of the charter schools and the private schools?
Yeah, I come down there because, first of all, it creates a different type of environment. You usually attract different type of educators who are really out, for the, just for the overall, the whole child, their spirit, their soul, their body, their mind. They want to see them get through school, but not just get through to get a diploma, but what next steps, what is futuristic for them. I like the charter school. It poses a smaller environment, and I believe small is the new mega. And like I said, it attracts a different type of people because not all the time are you going to make the same money in the charter school that you're going to make in the public school. There's so much failure in the public school and they gave you a lot of money for failure. They give you a lot of money when you're failing. That's why the suburbs, they don't use a lot of federal and government funding because they're not failing. But in the charter school, I believe that it gives you a different, type of environment that gives kids a greater hope. And I know some great charter schools across the country, Dr. Steve Perry and Dr. Marco Clark,
Yes.
just to name a few. There's some more in Harlem, just different places where they're really focusing on not just getting a child out of high school, but what can that child do once they're out? There are charter schools where 90 to 100% of the kids are going to some type of post high school environment, whether it's 2-year, whether it's technology, or whether it's 4-year colleges. And it's more than just trying to be in the NBA or the NFL or, Major League Baseball. It's more than that. And so, yes, I do lean towards the charter school. I really do. And plus, they can define what they want to do more than just coming in and saying, you have to do this. Like Dr. Clark's charter school is in writing and journalism. So most of his kids are going to come out in some type of news or television, or they're going to come out, with the tools they need to survive in that environment.
Yes, you mentioned Dr. Clark and Dr. Perry, and like you, they're very good friends of this show. And I tell you, I have hope, when on those days, when I, look at the news or hear the news and hear about our youth doing this, that, and the other, and a third, that's so contrary to what they're supposed to be doing, or they're not reading, or they're not being educated, so forth and so on. When I think about, and I tell people all the time, Dr. Perry or Dr. Roma Benjamin or Dr. Marco Clark, they're good friends of my show. I know them. I talk to them all the time, and this is what they're doing in their schools to make a difference, or in their programs to make a difference. And, I like to talk about the groundswell that I think is happening, although there's still much work that needs to be done. But it gives me hope. It gives me hope when I, look at what you're doing, when I hear about what you're doing, when I talk to you about what you're doing. All of that other negative stuff kind of is pushed back, and it gives me hope. It gives me hope. So,
yes.
Certainly you're to be commended for that. What is your long-term vision for your program that's steeped in this fight against illiteracy?
To literally get in the public school, to get in the daycares,
Mm-hmm.
to bring to teach. You know, if you're in the daycare, you already have the kids, right? And you
Yep.
already have the staff.
Yep.
So why not now train your staff? You know, you're not just there to make it safe for the kids and for them to play. We have some great daycares that are teaching, and I'm not taking that away from them. But you know, especially in the urban areas, you know, some the daycare doesn't mirror that. So if you have the staff, the Boys and Girls Club, the Y, these kids come in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How about creating an hour and a half, 3 to 4 days a week with intensive reading? Because they are the same kids who go back to the public school and they're the ones who are illiterate. And so my long-term vision is to infiltrate this city, this region, with this concept, with this ideology, with this philosophy, that we can create environments that will cause our students to be successful. I would love to train people. I tell them, you don't need degrees, you just need a desire to transform a child's life, even if it's just one child at a time. It's work. It takes a lot of energy. It drains you. But when you know that you're making, our millenniums will be productive. They will be so much greater. They are our doctors and lawyers, not of tomorrow, but of today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have to lead us in government. They're our presidents, our vice presidents. They are over the armies and the navies, you know. So my goal is to really get this out there full force. You know, and if it means upturning the public schools, then oh, so be it. So be it.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to
So
do.
be it.
This is war.
You know what I mean? This is war. This means war.
That's right.
Our children's lives are at stake. Our families, our society. Our societies are at stake. Why should we read in the paper a murder every weekend?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's a dead child or a dead young person, and then the other person who kills them, they're going to jail for life.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a long-term goal, Randall. I'm not stopping. It's a lot of work. I need to be able to pay staff. You know, I need more room. I need buildings. You know, land. Because to me, it's about changing and preparing this generation. Because if we don't do it, we're gonna lose them.
Yep, you got that right. We're so close to losing. We've already lost quite a few, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
In my interviews, I've talked about this very thing. I'm always talking about it, and I like to ask my guests, do you think that we've lost a generation? And to a person, they say yes, we've already lost a generation. That's in their opinion. Certainly, it's of mine also. But like you said, if we don't, do something, yeah, we're gonna lose them. We're gonna lose them, and they're gonna be gone.
I'm gonna keep plugging at this. I'm gonna keep plugging at this, Randall, until God opens that door where I've got plenty of resources coming in. You know,
Yes.
I'm able to train and create curriculum like you, to create curriculum to train people, men and women, to do this.
Okay.
And stop putting the onus on the school alone.
Exactly. I thoroughly agree. This has to be done not only in the home, but in the community. You mentioned the church.
Absolutely.
I hold the church's feet to the fire big time. Big time. We, as, speaking, as an African American male and as a Christian African American male, looking at, how far the churches have come in the black community, we are a multi-billion-dollar business. Not to say that the church is a business, but we are responsible for trillions of dollars in the gross domestic product. Certainly, the church is a large part of that. There is no reason why we cannot get together, or community by community, get together, start our own schools, or even have our own programs similar to what you are doing already out there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. There's no reason why we can't do that, But, it's a lot of
Randall,
work,
it should. I'm believing this to evolve where we do have our own school. We stop shoving our kids into the public school and then demanding them to do what they can't do.
Yeah.
I believe this. I want to go to daycare and say, look, eventually you turn your daycare into a school.
Yeah.
Because the compulsory age to go to school is 8 years old anyway. You understand what I mean? And most people send them at 5 because they need babysitters. Let's just tell the truth.
Yep.
They need babysitters.
Babysitters.
But if you sent your child to school at age 8, well equipped, we would have less failure and we would have more success. We would have less babysitting environments. and we would have productive, effective schools. But if not, then we can create those schools. We can create those environments. And that's my vision and my goal, to do that throughout Harrisburg, New York. It doesn't matter. Across the country. That's why my church is international. Because
Yes.
I want to go across the country with this.
In your travels, what kind of feedback are you receiving with regards to what you're doing in your fight against illiteracy?
Well, actually, Randall, I've gotten some great feedback for people outside of where, prophet is not accepted in their own home. But where I go, people have been extremely, like open, well, what can we do? How can we connect with you? What can I do to support you? How can I network with you? I've been on several radio shows throughout, I've just in Texas and Virginia, on my way to another part of Virginia. And so it's been very productive. And like I said, I'm talking in South Africa and Zimbabwe about this, which I will eventually be in different other countries, to talk about this. And it's being accepted because we know that literacy, illiteracy is at an all-time high. Yes. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
So it's like, is somebody going to be brave enough to step out and say, this is what we do. This is what I'm going to do, but I need help. And so I've gotten tremendous feedback. I've gotten people calling me from a variety of places, asking me for help. I connected with some people today, so I believe that this is going to go far because God has mandated, he has assigned me to this, and there are people that's going to be assigned to team up with me to do this, like you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And I fully accept, believe you me. Yeah, because this is a work that needs to be done, and, as we were talking about it before the interview, this program that I'm developing addresses the need for our children to learn 21st century skill sets, as I feel. They are not being taught these skill sets. They're just being, like you mentioned, passed through school and being prepared to, work menial jobs, working in a Burger King or working at a TGI Fridays or so forth and so on, which is okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a hard day's work. However, I don't know what kind of quality of life you're going to have, working for Burger King or McDonald's or what for a very long time. I believe in working smarter, not harder. And
I do too. That's a transitionatory job, meaning if I'm not going to own it, then I need to keep moving up higher.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't make
but
a
if
career
I'm 50 still doing fries, something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Exactly. Exactly.
At a cash register with pictures, something is wrong.
Yeah, I was just telling that thing to my wife just the other day. I said, I go to a lot of these, and I shouldn't be in these fast food restaurants in the first place. But when I go to them, sometimes, I'm telling myself. But I sit there and I see, I tell them what I want, and I'm just waiting for it, and I just haven't noticed at the cash register that there are pictures of the products that they're offering. And
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting there looking at a person that really can't read, and I'm like, oh my God, if you don't make a change, you're going to be here for the rest of your life.
My point, and so we've accepted functional illiteracy because that's functional, but it's illiterate.
We have been speaking with Dr. and Pastor Roma Benjamin. She is the pastor of the New Wine Gateway International Church out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She's a retired principal from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania School District, and she's also the founder of the New Sound Literacy and Technology Center, and we have certainly enjoyed her giving us some of her very valuable time today. And Dr. Roma Benjamin, if you could please feel free to plug your website as well as any project or projects that you are involved in.
Yes, sir. My website is www.newsound, L as in literacy, T as in technology, C as in center.com. So that's newsound.com. And the project that we're working on right now, we're working with some grants so that we can open up some other buildings throughout the city. And I would be more than glad to come to New York. I'm from Mount Vernon anyway, so I would be glad to come home and speak with educators and community leaders and politicians about this so that we could get something moving, over there in Valhalla, White Plains, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, Bronx. in that
Mm-hmm.
area. So I could
Mm-hmm.
be reached also at 717-545-4594.
4594.
Yes.
Okay.
717-545-4594.